Man, who in the room would say, Sam, I love to travel. I love to go new places. Who is that? Go ahead and let me see you, okay? Who are my people in the room that say, Sam, I'm a homebody. I never want to leave, okay? Franklin, Thompson Station, Spring Hill's good for me. Walmart seems far to me, like I don't want to go anywhere, I love to travel at times when I get a chance, and I love to see new places and experience new things. And I shared with some of you a couple of weeks ago that I went to Egypt recently. And Larry went with me and Chris went with me. And as we were going to Egypt, there was one thing in my mind that I thought, man, if I'm going all the way to Egypt, which is the farthest I've ever been away from home, I thought, I've got to see this one thing. And you can probably already think of what it was. To me, it was the pyramids. I thought, I can't go all the way to Egypt and not see the pyramids. But I'd also seen certain people I knew that had rode camels at the pyramids. Now, I've rode a few horses and stuff, but something inside of me just said, I've got to ride a camel at the pyramid. Like, I've got to do it. And so we get to the pyramids, and I had seen pictures of the pyramids. I'd read about them. I'd heard about them. But when I stood there, I was in awe, and it was a life-changing experience to actually be there and think through, how did people actually build this? How is it still standing? These massive structures that were built out in the desert. And I'm just taking it all in, and it's unbelievable to actually be there. And then we walk down to where the camels are, and we're going to take a camel ride by the pyramids. Now, we had a camel guide named Shaban. Let me tell you a little bit about Shaban. Imagine an Egyptian that had just drank 10 cups of coffee and then comes to be your camel guide, right? This dude was out of his mind with energy. He had a stick, he was slapping the camel. He was yelling at the camel. He was yelling at me. I was like, yes, sir, Shaban, And we get on these camels, and he's directing us, and he's leading us, and he's yelling at us, he's hollering at us, and he's full of energy, and even he only spoke a little bit of English, so he'd yell at us. He'd say, Sam, Chris, take him by the legs, take him by the legs. Here's all that meant. We finally figured out the translation was just kick the camel so the camel moves, right? And goes forward. We get down to this one spot, pyramids behind us, and he says, hey, this is a spot I want to take a picture of you guys on the camels. So he takes a picture of Larry, me, and Chris, and check this picture out real quickly. Oh, come on. Those are three good-looking men right there. I mean, put that on the cover of a magazine. And but then he pulls us over. And for some reason, I get selected. I don't know why. And he has all the camels get on the ground. He has us get off the camels. And he comes over to me and he says, Sam, stand on the camel. Now, I don't know a lot about camels, but I know standing on one does not sound like a good idea. So I didn't move. I said, what are you talking about? He goes, stand on the camel. I said, are we having a language barrier here? And he says, stand on the camel. And then he just goes like this. And he hops up on the camel, and he's standing on the camel, and then he says, watch, jump off and we'll take a picture. And he jumps off the camel. Now I'm thinking to myself, I've come all the way from Tennessee. Chris is from Alabama, God help him, right? Larry's from Texas. I'm from, oh gosh, if there wasn't Tennessee, there'd be no Texas. And then remember the Alamo. And then I'm from the only state that matters, the great promised land itself, Tennessee. We've got a game at 1:20. God, give us another one. Work a miracle. Come on, somebody. And so we got Alabama, Texas, Tennessee. We got three rednecks on camels in Egypt. And all I could think about was, Shaban, you ain't about to show me up. So I get on this camel. I'm standing on the camel. I jump off the camel, and this is what we captured. Check this out. Boom, baby. Woo! That's like Air Jordan. Y'all didn't know that there was an athletic specimen like this on stage today. But man, we were leaving that day. And we were just talking about, man, to actually be there and to see the pyramids and ride the camels, it was a life-changing experience. Here's what I want you to get today. That maybe you've heard about Jesus. Maybe you've read about Jesus. But when you actually get into a relationship with Jesus, Jesus changes everything. He changes everything about your past. He changes everything on the inside of you. He changes everything about your future. He changes everything around you. When you actually encounter Jesus, everything changes. And if you don't get anything else I say today, get this, because this is where we're going in the message, that Jesus changes everything. If you walked in here today as a skeptic, wondering if Jesus is real, wondering if Jesus rose from the dead, I hope that you leave today saying Jesus is alive and Jesus changes everything. If you walked in here today and you say, Sam, I don't believe at all, I hope something rises up within you and you leave today saying Jesus is alive, Jesus changes everything. If you came in here today and you've been in church your whole life and you've been saved for 40 years, I hope you leave with more fire than ever, shouting from the rooftops, Jesus changes everything. And over the next few minutes, here's what I want to do. If you got a Bible, open up to John chapter 19. If you don't, it'll be on the screens. I want to look at the cross, and I want to look at two ways Jesus changes everything at the cross, and then two ways at the empty tomb that we see Jesus changes everything. In John chapter 19, verse 16, it says this, then he handed him over to be crucified, talking about Jesus being handed over. Then they took Jesus away, carrying the cross by himself. He went out to what is called Place of the Skull, which in Aramaic is called Golgotha. There they crucified him and two others with him, one on either side with Jesus in the middle. Pilate also had a sign made and put it on the cross. It said, Jesus of Nazareth, the King of the Jews. Many of the Jews read this sign because the place where Jesus was crucified was near the city, and it was written in Aramaic, Latin, and Greek. So the chief priest of the Jews said to Pilate, don't write the King of the Jews, but that he said, I am the King of the Jews. Pilate replied, what I have written, I have written. When the soldiers crucified Jesus, they took his clothes and divided them into 4 parts, a part for each soldier. They also took the tunic, which was seamless, woven in one piece from the top. So they said to one another, let's not tear it, but cast lots for it to see who gets it. This happened that the scripture might be fulfilled that says, they divided my clothes among themselves, and they cast lots for my clothing. This is what the soldiers did. Number one today, I want you to see this, that Jesus changes everything we know about love. I want to go backwards just for a moment. Jesus is in the garden praying with his disciples, and the disciples can't stay awake. And then they come to arrest Jesus, and Jesus asked them, who are you looking for? They said, Jesus of Nazareth, and the scripture tells us that Jesus said, I am he. And when Jesus said, I am he, the scriptures tell us that the soldiers fell down. You say, Sam, why does that matter? Because I want you to realize today that Jesus chose to go to the cross. He didn't have to go to the cross. The Bible says he could have called a legion of angels and he didn't have to go to the cross, but he chose to go to the cross. Just in the power of him saying, I am he, soldiers fell down. A few minutes later, Peter pulls out a sword and he cuts off a guy's ear named Malchus. And Jesus takes that ear and he puts it back on Malchus. I believe today that there were soldiers who were arresting Jesus. And as they were arresting Jesus, they were asking this question, who actually is this guy? Because there's something different about him. There's something supernatural about him. And why would Jesus choose to do this? Because he loves you and I. Let me give you the gospel in sub 2 minutes here, from Genesis all the way to the crucifixion. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. He had Adam and Eve. He said, you can eat of any tree you want, just not this one. They eat of that tree. You say, Sam, why does that matter to us today? Because how many times has God said not do something and you and I have done it? How many times has God told us to do something and we haven't done it? Ever since that moment, man, sin entered the world and we live in a fallen world. That's why, man, no one has to teach you or me how to be selfish. No one has to teach you or me how to be greedy. No one has to teach any of us how to be lustful or to go after things of the world. And so for the longest time in the Old Testament, people would take animals, they'd put them on the altar, they'd sacrifice the animal, and the blood would be to cover their sins. What is this doing? It is pointing forward to when a sacrifice, a perfect sacrifice, will come. So all throughout the Old Testament, you hear about this Messiah who is to come, this perfect Messiah who will live a perfect life, who will take the payment for all of our sins. And then you get to Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And if you really read through each of them, you'll see that every single one of these guys, every moment they get a chance, they're drawing a connection to the Old Testament over and over and over and over again. You say, Sam, why? They're trying to show us something. They're trying to say, this guy that you've heard about, his name is Jesus. This guy that's been prophesied about, his name is Jesus. This guy that we've heard is going to come, his name is Jesus. And then Jesus willingly allowed them to put a crown of thorns on his head and blood streamed down. He willingly allowed them to beat him and mock him. He willingly allowed them to take a whip with sharp materials on the end and whip him in the back and rip out his flesh over and over and over again. He willingly allowed them to put a purple robe on him. He willingly allowed them to make him carry his own cross. He willingly allowed them to stretch out his arms and his legs and drive nails through them. Why? Because as Jesus hung on that cross, he was making a very important statement. And here was that statement: I love you. I love you. Isn't it beautiful that, man, the position they put Jesus in is the position that Jesus always talked about, that his arms are open wide for all people. Jesus said, I love you no matter what you look like. I love you no matter what you sound like. I love you no matter what your background has been, how many mistakes you've made. I'm going to the cross knowing everything you will do, past, present, and future. Why? I love you. And we don't know a love like that. We love to love people who do something for us. Who care for us, we care for them. They do something for us, we want to do something for them. You know, if you're new this weekend, this is a picture of my family. And I told some of you a few weeks ago that my wife likes to dress our son like he's Prince Charles of the royal family. And I'm still praying, God, make a way. Put that boy in some camo, you know. And but I want you to notice how clean he is right here, because in a minute I'm going to show you a picture of him in a mess. And Everett loves yogurt right now. And he doesn't even call it yogurt, he calls it yogi. And so you can say, hey, do you want some yogi? And he'll just get real excited and go, yogi, you know. And so the other day, she left him with some yogurt, and she left. Well, while she was gone, Everett decided to eat the yogurt his way instead of the way that we've taught him. And this is how he was when she came back. Check that out. I like the hand right there. Now, this is a silly example. But here's what I want you to see today. That, man, when Jesus went to the cross, he saw you in your mess. He saw you in your shame. See, some of you walked in here today and you think that maybe Christians or church is for people who have it all together. It's really for people who realize they don't have it all together, and they need someone who did have it all together, whose name is Jesus. And so know this, that we don't have it all together. We just recognize that Jesus saw us in our mess, and he said, I'll die for you anyways. He said, I know every time you'll mess up, every mistake you'll make, everything that you'll ever do that you regret, but I love you enough to die in your place. Why does this matter too? Because number two today, Jesus changes everything we know about forgiveness. And forgiveness can be a hard thing for us. I don't know about you, but if someone hurts me, I want to hurt them. If someone comes at me, I want to come at them. But there's a beauty in forgiveness. And the beautiful thing about Jesus is when he was on the cross and as he was dying for us, he was saying, if you come to me, if you bring it to me, if you lay it down before me, I'll forgive you for everything you've ever done, past, present, or future. I don't know how you walked in here today, but some of you may have walked in and you've just been weighed down by past mistakes. You've been weighed down by what you would consider failures. You've been weighed down by different burdens. And I just want to tell you today, don't be nailed down to what Jesus already nailed down on the cross. Don't be weighed down to the weight that Jesus already took on the cross. Don't be burdened by the burden Jesus already took on the cross for you. I think that we all long to be made right with our earthly father or mother or whoever holds that position in our life. But I would even argue today that I think that we all have a longing to be made right with the creator of the universe. Even if we don't know what that is, that many of us, we think there's something more, there's something beyond this, and we long to be made right. When I was a senior in high school, my dad got cancer, and when I was a sophomore in college, he passed away. And it got to that point where they called us and they said, hey, you need to come say anything you need to say because it could be any day now when he passes. And my dad and I were very similar. So we're both very strong-willed. I was stubborn. I never wanted to give in. And so we were a lot alike. And so we would clash a lot. And I came and I sat on his bed and I just said, Dad, I said, I'm sorry for all the times that I fought with you. Sorry for all the times that I was stubborn and didn't listen to you. Dad, I'm sorry for all the times that I messed up. I'll never forget, my dad looked back at me and he said, son, every son fights for their father. It's okay. I love you. Go be the man that God has called you to be. I want you to know today that I don't know how you came in. I don't know what you're dealing with. I don't know what you're struggling with. But you need to know this today, that if you come to Jesus today, no matter how you feel you're labeled, what you think you are, or what someone has said about you, if you come to Jesus, you know what he'll do? He'll look at you and he'll say, hey, daughter, hey, son, it's okay. I love you. Now go be the man or woman of God that I've called you to be. And number 3 today, I want you to see this. Jesus changes everything we know about victory. Flip over to chapter 20, and we're going to read verse 11 here in just a moment. You need to know this today, that the cross is unbelievable. And John chapter 19 is great. But if there's no chapter 20 and there's no empty tomb, then none of this matters. Many people agree, and I'll share in just a moment, that Jesus lived. Many people agree that Jesus died on the cross. But where the rubber doesn't meet the road is they don't believe that Jesus actually rose from the dead. And I would even argue this today, that if you can believe that Jesus rose from the dead, then any other question you have can be answered because he's God. We've never seen anyone else get up out of the grave. We've never seen anyone else come back after 3 days. And so if you can believe in your heart that he rose from the dead, then all the other questions can be answered in that. Look at verse 11. But Mary stood outside the tomb crying. As she was crying, she stooped to look into the tomb. She saw 2 angels in white sitting where Jesus' body had been lying, one at the head and the other at the feet. They said to her, woman, why are you crying? Because they've taken away my Lord, she told them, and I don't know where they've put him. Don't forget that even the people closest to Jesus didn't actually believe that he rose from the dead. And who could blame them? No one had ever seen that before. Having said this, she turned around and saw Jesus standing there. But she did not know it was Jesus. Woman, Jesus said to her, why are you crying? Who is it that you are seeking? This is like undercover boss right now in this passage. You never know where Jesus is. You better be careful. Supposing he was the gardener, she replied, sir, if you've carried him away, tell me where you've put him, and I will take him away. Jesus said to her, Mary. And I think there's something beautiful about when Jesus said her name, she recognized him. Turning around, she said to him in Aramaic, Rabboni, which means teacher. Don't cling to me, Jesus told her, since I have not yet ascended to the Father, but go to my brothers and tell them that I am ascending to my Father and your Father, to my God and your God. Mary Magdalene went and announced to the disciples, I have seen the Lord. And she told them what he had said to her. A couple of things real quickly about Jesus rising from the dead. I want you to think about these things and wrestle with them in your heart. If anybody wanted to kill Christianity, all they had to do was find the body, verify the body, show the body, and it's over. All the Romans had to do to put the rumor out was find the body of Jesus, show the body of Jesus, and it's over. If the Jews wanted the rumor to be over, all they had to do was find the body, verify the body, and it's over. And Jesus wasn't just anybody. He was a notable figure. They put Roman guards at the tomb. They put a Roman seal at the tomb. Yet somehow no one's ever found his body. Not only that, but think about all these people would go to the end of the world, the disciples, going to different countries, proclaiming that Jesus is alive, and they would lose their lives over this. You say, Sam, people lose their lives all the time for things that aren't true. Yes, but they don't know it's not true. These people would have actually seen Jesus die, and then they would have actually had to see him rise from the dead, or why would they go to the ends of the world to lose their life, to not gain power, to not gain fame, and really to die terrible deaths unless Jesus showed up? We also know from the Bible that there was 500 eyewitnesses, tons of eyewitnesses who said they saw Jesus. That many people would not have had the same kind of hallucination. But yet Jesus was appearing to them. They saw them. And even the Bible says, go ask these people. They have seen the risen Lord. But a lot of people have a lot to say about Jesus. Other religions have a lot to say about Jesus. Islam refers to Jesus as a prophet. Buddhism doesn't have a singular view, but many describe him as a good person that even lived out some of the practices of Buddha. Hinduism doesn't have a singular view either, but it has so many gods. Some would even incorporate Jesus as one of their gods. And Gandhi, who was one of the well-known Hindu teachers, said Jesus was one of the greatest teachers humanity has ever seen. Mormons would say Jesus was Lucifer's brother, and they have certain works that you've got to do to have certain positions in heaven. Atheist Richard Dawkins even said that Jesus publicly advocated niceness and was the first one to do so. Jehovah's Witnesses believe that Jesus' pre-existent form in heaven was Michael the archangel, so that means that he wasn't actually God when he came to earth, so he has no power to save and that he's not divine. Judaism, they believe that Jesus was not the actual Messiah, so they believe the Messiah is still to come. Scientology has the idea that Jesus was God is considered fiction and comes from unenlightened minds. The New Age movement, they deny his resurrection and his ascension. Here's the problems with that. Number one, Jesus never claimed to be any of those things. Jesus claimed to be Lord. So he's either a liar or he's a lunatic. And number two, if Jesus rose from the dead, all of those claims go out the window. And I'm here to remind you today that Jesus did rise from the dead. And when he rose from the dead, he made several statements of his own. And they were statements like this: I am not just a prophet. I am not just some teacher. I am not just some wise person. I'm not just someone claiming to be the Messiah. I'm not just anybody else. I am the King of Kings. I am the Lord of Lords. I am Emmanuel, God with us. I am the King of heaven. I am the King of earth. I am the King of glory. I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. And I am the victor who holds the keys to death, hell, and the grave. And what is Jesus saying to you today? He's saying, I am alive, and if you'll let me in your life, I will be, and I am your sustainer. I am your healer. I am your provider. I am your way to salvation. I am the one who will walk with you through this earth and be with you in this life and in the next life. Because if there's a real God, there's a real heaven, and there's a real hell. And you can spend eternity one day with Jesus forever. Number 4 today, Jesus changes everything we know about life. Why does it matter there's a real heaven, real hell, real God, all of those things? Because let me ask this question. It wouldn't take us long in this room to realize we live in a broken world. How many more times do we have to see someone shoot up a school to realize we live in a broken world? How many more times do we have to see someone in our community who was way too young and we read about it, they took their own life? How many more times do we have to see someone cheat on their spouse, and so a family is broken for generations and has wounds that need to be healed by Jesus? How many more times, fill in the blank? And listen, Jesus can redeem, Jesus can save, Jesus can restore, Jesus can do all kinds of things. So why do we have hope? Because we believe that Jesus can change things now, where we presently live, by changing people, so that the old is gone and the new has come. And we have hope because one day we long and we hope for that place called heaven, where there is no more pain and there is no more sickness and there is no more evil forever and ever and ever. And he'll change everything about your life. He changed everything on the cross 2,000 years ago, but he's still changing everything now. And I want to share some stories as we end today to show you this. Check out this first picture. This is Matt and Sherilyn Langley. And Sherilyn, for the longest time, has been leading worship in our kids building for the kids every Sunday morning. For the last 13 years, Matt has never come to church with her, and she's always come by herself to lead worship with the kids. Well, recently, Matt encountered the Lord, gave his life to Jesus, was baptized the first Sunday in January, and now he shows up to church so early that he joins us at staff huddle on Sunday mornings. Matt and Sherilyn would tell you that Jesus changes everything. This next picture is a guy named Dakota. A couple of months ago, Dakota came down to the altar, and he came to Pastor Chris, and he said, I've always struggled with addiction in my life. On and off since high school, I've had this battle, I've had this struggle. Chris talked to him about Jesus and walked him through the path to salvation, led him through the prayer. Dakota gave his life to Jesus, and even in that moment, he said, I feel freedom. He's been going to a group, and he's got community around him, holding him accountable. He's been serving. I showed up yesterday in the morning about 9-something to put on a bunny costume for all the kids. And what I did Dakota was out on 31 with his son, Andrew, picking up trash. Dakota would tell you Jesus changes everything. This is the Stevens family next. Matt and Heather just went through a tough time in their marriage, and they brought it to the Lord. It didn't look like things were going to work out, but they brought it to Jesus, and Jesus restored their marriage, and now all four of them are here this weekend and serving. They would tell you Jesus changes everything. Look at this last one here. This is a guy named CK. And CK said when he was 9 that his father took his own life. He stopped going to church after that. He would attend different kinds of churches on and off since college, but he never walked with Jesus. He knew the right churchy answers, but there were several times in his life where he felt utterly hopeless and he didn't know what to do. About a month ago, his son got baptized on Reach Weekend. He came down, he gave his life to Jesus. Then he got baptized, and CK would tell you today that Jesus changes everything. Man, I had a point in my life where I was so mad at God. I was so angry at God that my dad died from cancer. God didn't heal him. There was a point in my life where you would have found me with a bottle in my hand before you ever found me with a Bible in my hand. You would have saw me at a party before you ever saw me at church. But I'm here today as a living testimony to declare that Jesus is alive and Jesus changes everything. 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 Listen to me today. However you came in, Jesus is reaching out. All you have to do is reach back out to him, and he can change everything. It doesn't mean that everything's going to work out. It doesn't mean that everything's going to be easy, but it does mean that you have the God of the universe with you through it all in this life, and then one day you'll spend eternity with him in a real place called heaven.